Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas expressed by the guest, myself, or commenters may not necessarily reflect the same opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Enlightenment, defined. It is the state of giving or receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a certain subject or situation. Evolution, defined. The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to more complex form. So what is enlightenment evolution? The state of giving and receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to more complex human being living on Earth for our soul's experience. Welcome now and join us as we explore our Enlightenment Evolution Hour together. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is simulcast live every Wednesday at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific from the Enlightenment Evolution Hour page, Matrix Minds Facebook page, and the ET Whisper YouTube channel. It is also redistributed from the Forbidden Knowledge News Network and Conscious Awakening Network. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer, and I want to welcome all of you to this amazing show that we have today and an amazing guest. And as you guys know, always to some of your delight and some of your dismay, we have announcements, and I'll make those as quick as possible today. The show announcements are, and I even have my calendar pulled up, we're going to have some guests coming up next week. I said we were. Next week, we're going to have the one and only Shelly Young. She's been on the show before. She's a dear friend, an amazing channeler. She's going to be coming. And throughout the next couple of weeks after that, we will announce as we go. We do have on December 6th, Suzanne Ross, who is an amazing person. She's the lady who did the event in Sedona that I was a part of and am going to be a part of, which I will share in the announcements here in a minute for the ET Whisper. And as for the network, we always have this show every Wednesday, and also we have Out There Talk with Valiant himself, and that is an Instagram live show. You can go there at 11:59 p.m. Eastern tonight and watch his show. And we also have the Matrix Minds, not officially a part of our network, but they host our show on their network on Facebook. So we always want to give a shout out to them. If you go to the Matrix Minds at Facebook, you can check that out, and they're amazing. So go check out the other show, Out There Talk, at 11:59 p.m. I believe every Tuesday and Wednesday. Myself, Kalina, and many of our friends have been on that show. It's an amazing show, great topics and great insight. Also, for the network, the mothership may be returning in the next couple of months, and when I get word on that, I will give you guys word on that. As far as the announcements for the ET Whisper, the big one is that in less than 2 weeks, we're doing this online event. Tyler Ellison, the channeler of Ryoka, is going to be with myself, and we're going to do a 2-day online event where both of us will be taking questions from the live audience and doing it on camera, Q&A. I'll be channeling Ardif, he'll be channeling Ryoka, and both of us will be doing this. We'll have 4-hour days for 2 days in a row on the 25th and 26th, starting from 4 p.m. Eastern, ending at 8 p.m. Eastern. And that will be Saturday and Sunday after Thanksgiving in the United States. So November 25th and 26th. You can join us and ask questions live. And if you want to join us, but you can't make it live, you will get a recording, both video and audio afterwards. And you'll have access to that from this point of time until forever, or until whatever servers we storm on don't like us anymore, or if they're, whatever kind of world event happens where they don't want us to have internet, or you don't want to have internet, or you decide to live in a mountain. But if you want it, you'll have it forever. And that's the point of what I'm trying to get at here, guys. So join us if you want. If it resonates, hang out with us. Also, we're going to be going to Sedona again, and that's going to be and I'm sorry, I don't have the poster of that right on hand. Even if I do, it's not going to fit on the screen. I forgot it's a different format of a poster. But in March, I believe 8, 9, and 10, I will be in Sedona. So will Daryl Anka, Wendy Kennedy, our old friend Sean Swanson, along with many other people in the community, Matt Kahn. A lot of people, tons and tons of people will be there. It's going to be a large event for 3 days. I'm going to be joining as a part of a panel with Wendy Kennedy and Sean Swanson, as well as doing my own channeling and doing a walkabout, like I did last time out in the Sedona Vortex, is taking a walk out there, connecting to guides, things of that nature. So if you do go to that event, please use ET Whisper 10 for 10% off. And I'm also going to the Conscious Life Expo. I'll be there doing a 60-minute workshop and a 45-minute class. And I'll have a booth there for all 3 days. So come join me, hang out with me if you're in the LA area during that time. And that's February. I don't have the dates in front of me, but that's in February. You can always go to the website, etwhisper.com, and check all that out. Enough of announcements, guys. I really, sorry. Okay. I just read a comment and got distracted. If you send me an email about that Janger, I'll answer you on that one. But I want to talk about our guest tonight. We have an amazing guest. Jamye Price, the author of Opening to Light Language and the Cosmic Consciousness Ascension Deck, is an energy healer, channel, and teacher. For over a decade, she has been teaching the path of empowerment as humanity moves through the natural process of ascension, an ever-increasing consciousness connection with the subtle realm. She's developed a profound healing modality called the Crystalline Soul Healing, and with her Lyran Guide is a powerful alchemy template of soul progression and heals and empowers, bridging the inherent wisdom of the human higher self. In addition, she also channels healing energies in the form of light language, and her light language is amazing. I had a chance to perceive and see that in real time, which was an amazing experience, which we'll definitely talk about, which are transformational creation codes that further align you and your soul. And she teaches these modalities worldwide. I can talk for a long time about her. I could tell you every statistic that's out and available on the internet, but what better way to do that than to bring her in and speak to herself. Hello, Jamye. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Rob. Hello, everyone.
Well, it's nice to have you on. And I'll start off with saying I have a good friend of mine who helps us with the artwork around here and who helps us with the videos. And he absolutely loves your work and has followed it for a long time. So we'll talk about that. But I do want to start off where I start off with everybody at first. And it's the very first question. You know, people who followed your work or may have heard you on an interview before might know your story. Some might not. And I definitely want to talk about that because that's an important part. But I want to know what was before that. Like, what were the things in your childhood that kind of molded you to be a person who was available to have the story that you have? What were the influences and things in your life at young age that opened you to have these types of experiences?
Nice. Yeah. So I would say some of it was direct and some of it was indirect. So I was not a psychic child, but I was a sensitive child, and I had, like many light workers, kind of a challenging family situation that made me go inward more. It made me um, learn different types of boundaries, like how to interact and sense the energies around me. So I developed that sensitivity to people, and that really has served me as I became more empowered. So it's kind of one of the indirect ones that I didn't quite realize the gift in it at the time, but now it definitely helps me feel into things in a deeper way, and to know my boundaries, to kind of sense the areas around me. The other thing that was a little more direct was I was always doing something creative, and that stretched all through my life. And I mean, it was everything from writing to dancing to actually later in my life, there was a time where I didn't have any of my typical creative outlets. I had moved through acting and certainly the dancing and everything like that. But I started cooking and that became a creative outlet. And when I had that experience, I realized that one, I was missing my creative flow. And two, I was going to find it again no matter what it took. And so that direct flow of creativity, I think really helped open me up to different experiences and, kind of made me interested in the details and a lot of the things that I experience now in connection with my guides and channeling and healing. So it all kind of led in there. And then actually, secondarily, as an adult, when I would have jobs, even corporate, some that wasn't corporate work, I also liked that left brain stuff. I looked at it as creative and learning, and so I kind of enjoyed all of it. And all of that still serves me today.
Well, it's amazing that you say that because that's kind of been a theme within a lot of the guests that I have, that a lot of people who are deeply intuitive and empathic and psychic and just connected to themselves as a person and kind of understand their reality really well. A lot of them had a very strong aspect of their childhood or aspect of their young adulthood growing into the spiritual experience by having some sort of creativity or some outlet within creativity. Why do you think that that opens up and translates so easily with psychic people or with intuitive people from your experience?
I feel like it's so attuned to a channeled state. When we're creative, we're present, we're connected inward, and we're in a state of flow. And so your intuition, your sensitivity to be able to read, a client or to allow a channeling through, those are so similar. And even in my book, I talked about it, which I hadn't really thought about it that way because I did take painting classes for a while, which was so amazing. And I'm not even a painter, but when you can get in that state of flow, sometimes things happen where you're like, wow, I didn't even know I could do that. And and then that difference between like a painter that has skill and is just technically copying something and make it look just like something else, they're using a lot of technique and they're not in that pure state of flow of allowance. They're in a concentrated state of technique, but it's still a type of flow. And so to me, creativity and everything that we're doing with our intuition and with energy flow or channeling, so similar, so akin and attuned to each other.
I really feel resonant with that, and I like that description. I never thought about that either, with the having the aspects of creativity coming from original creation versus that of a mimicked creation. They do still have that same undertone of flow, even when one is copied. Because we've all done something, creating a poster or creating something like that, where we're like, okay, this is a carbon copy of the last one. I just need to adjust, but there still is a mental flow that wants the same outcome, and that same outcome ends up being something that you can share, uh, with your boss, with a friend, with your community, whatever it is that will open people's excitement. And that makes sense too, because that connection to other people often is what opens up a lot of other people who maybe might not be as creative, but they're very emotionally connectable to things. And that kind of is the other thing I've seen that's very common with channelers, intuitives, and psychics. So that makes a lot of sense. And going from there, going from your creativity, tell us how you went from that creative young person who really liked to pour your energy into that into where you are as a channeler and a light language and a healer, and a person who is doing the work that you're doing now.
Hmm. So, uh, to me, that when my psychic senses started opening, it felt a lot like that creative flow where something's exciting and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're engaged in it. And it it just kind of took its natural course of the like my senses opening more, and then that passion developing, which again, another thing about creativity, you're stirring a passion and kind of fueling that. And that for me was what was so pivotal when I started, well, actually, when I encountered energy healing, and especially the term ascension, like that was another thing that just lit me up, where I was like, oh my gosh, that I just caught on fire with that, because that passion is such an important part of this too. And that just kept me participating, it kept me searching, it got me kind of obsessed with, no matter what happens in life, I will be pursuing these things like energy healing and channeling, because it was so compelling to me. And that, just like a creative flow, was just passion that just I had to do it,
Well,
had to share it.
that's amazing. I love that became so prevalent in your mind, and kind of, like you said, it burned through. That's something I've also noticed with a lot of people in their very early times of connecting. It's kind of a mixed bag, and that's how it works with people. Some people were exposed to a lot of spiritual material beforehand. Other people hardly any at all. Maybe basic philosophy or principle, or just heard, a thing or two. Um, so once you heard this idea expressed, and you felt that, and you started kind of diving into that, what was it? A pattern of both mental exploration and energetic exploration and creative expression, or did it just kind of come to you naturally and just hit you, and once you kind of heard that term and worked around that term, or seen other people doing it, it kind of just came to you? How did that work?
So for me, it opened up pretty slowly and in ways that at the time I didn't always understand, but it was it was just so nurturing. So I would start to have, well, my psychic senses first opened up with like flashes that would happen. And then often they were things that could be proven, and unusual things. Like I'd be driving and I'd hear in my head, so and so is going to be there at wherever I was going. And it was someone that I hadn't seen for years. One time I was driving to another state to a class, and someone I hadn't seen for years was there also, and I would get those psychic hits. So that was kind of reaffirming for me. But when the bigger openings started to happen, I wasn't aware of it and I wasn't expecting it. I didn't have a context for it. I didn't have exposure to any kind of spiritual teachings. I didn't know what chakras were. I hadn't heard of any of that stuff. And I would have these experiences where I would kind of zone out and then kind of come back into consciousness, and I would be hearing a conversation in my head. And like one of them that stands out was, I was just so confused when I came back into consciousness. I was like, why am I thinking about the healing properties of the color green? What is that about? But this was all kind of going on as it was slowly opening up. And then I had the impulse when I woke up feeling sick, like a cold or a flu was going to start. So I had the impulse to run my hand over my body just a couple of inches above it. And I would get to certain places and my hand would stop and I would see this gray energy in my mind's eye leaving my body. And then I just felt like, well, I'll just empty out my hand now. It's kind of full. So those weird impulses started happening. And then, I kind of napped for about half an hour or so. I woke up feeling fine. I was like, well, that was really cool. So then I just started trying that on my friends and family without telling them at the time, which I don't recommend, but I was like, hey, they're sick. I'll just see if this works. And it did work. So that just kind of kept moving me forward. And then it was after I started getting interested in that, I would talk to people, and then I started, I found the Kryon work, for example. And at some point, when I heard the word ascension, which was probably years into this, I was like, oh, whoa, that is what I'm here to do. That is what I am now obsessed with. And so it just kind of unfolded like that. But it started out kind of a personal journey that I didn't even realize I was hearing my guides at the time. I didn't know that was a conversation with them. I was like, well, this is so weird. Why am I thinking this stuff? So I love that it unfolded like that, though.
Yeah, and it's funny too. You being one of the few people I've met who had a similar thing happening, where you're having these things occur without much context, and when it happens, it's like, huh,
Yeah.
that's a weird. Yeah, this is one thing. Like I said, I have a friend, John, who has studied your work for a long time. He really loves you. Because when I met you, I knew that you did this. I knew that you did this work, but I had not bumped into your work before. And then when Lisa posted her pictures on Facebook with you and with me, my buddy's like, "Holy shit, you met her?" And I was like, "Yeah, I met her. Yeah, we met at the thing in Sedona." And he's like, "Oh my god!" And then he told me all about who you were and all of the information. And I had already looked you up from our meeting with that because Lisa knew you, and I've talked to Lisa many times throughout the years. I've always known she was great, but this was the first time I got to meet her. So, in my mind, hey, Lisa's cool. And if
Yep.
Lisa thinks she's cool, then she's probably cool because that's how it usually works. And then I went and checked out, but my friend John was elated to know that you're coming to the show tonight. And he told me about a thing that had happened with you too. He said that you kind of got into the Cryon's work and then had found a lot of your insight from that, or not insight from that, but that's where you found out a lot about what was going on inside of you. And also at one of these meetings is where you first started your light language energy, if I understood what he was sharing correct, or if he did get that correct. I know some people don't. But is that correct? And if it is, can you kind of share what that experience was about?
Well, the light language had started years before I ever went to a Kryon event, and I had an axiotonal alignment back in 2002, and I had already been doing energy healing by that time. So I was working on clients, and I had the axiotonal alignment done. And when I came back, that's when the light language started. So I was used to having people laying on the table with their eyes closed, and I was just doing whatever my guides were telling me to do. But now my body was starting to twitch, and I was just observing that, like, oh, that's interesting. And then my hands would start to move on their own, and then that got faster and bigger over time. So that's how the light language started, which was very comfortable for me because, it was silent. People's eyes were closed and I'm in conversation with my guides. So that was perfectly comfortable. But then the sound wanted to start coming out, and that was not comfortable for me.
No, I can imagine that would be a little jarring at first. Yeah.
Right. I was like, whoa, I don't know about that. And so a couple years into that, I found Cryon's work in 2004, I think. And I loved it. It felt like family. It was such loving energy. I still have so many dear soul friends from the Cryon work. And it was there that I really had to kind of come to terms with either suppressing it really hard or letting it flow. And so I would sit in the back of the room because I could no longer sit up front. And my body, I would have to sit on my hands. I have to hold my mouth shut
Oh
so
no.
that sound wouldn't come out. And obviously I don't want to disrupt someone's event. That's rude. But this energy was just wanting to pour out of me, and so I was holding it back. And then I started having experiences over the years as I was sitting in the back, friends and other people that were farther behind me, and they had seen it. And so finally I was like, I'm just going to sit in the back. I'm going to let it flow as appropriate, and I don't want to disturb anyone, but that, I don't want to hold it in either, because that was just really hard. And what I discovered is it didn't interrupt anyone. It wasn't loud because it became appropriate for the environment. But when I was working so hard to hold it back, it's almost like trying to hold water flow back instead of just letting it flow. So the Kryon work in that way was just so helpful to me. And I just had so many lessons of honoring yourself and honoring the environment that you're in, and letting things flow as appropriate. So it was just really beautiful.
That is a beautiful story. And when you said, stopping the water flow, it reminds me of the thumb over the water hose, when you're trying to stop that thing from coming out, it's spraying everywhere, getting places it's not supposed to go. But if you let it happen, that's a beautiful analogy too. Thank you for that. So what you just said reminded me a lot of things. I've worked with a ton of channelers over the years. My wife and partner, Kalina Angel, and I do these multi-channeler events, and we're just getting ready to start back up on that. Or we're already in the process of starting back up. And one thing I noticed is that when we all get together in the same place, and we're all together energetically, it's just better. My channeling's better. It takes me less time to neutralize. That happened in Sedona too. Normally, if I don't get a chance to take 10 minutes to neutralize before I channel, I can feel the channeling's off a little bit. Even though most people don't hear it, I know it is. And, it takes a little longer for the energy to come through in the way it should. And, things that you notice about yourself as an intuitive or an energetic person. But when I get around these other channelers, it's like a magnification of that energy in a collective sense. And I know that works everywhere where you get a lot of people excited about one thing. It's going to be better for everyone. But with channeling, it really seemed to turn that up. So I can easily imagine that being the place where it really helped open up that spot for you. And I'm glad you got the opportunity to do that. I know Lee Carroll is always out doing events and groups still to this day, and a lot of people I know who've gone to them say that they really love that too. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's go then from how your work has started. You have been doing energy work and healing work for other people. Um, and how does that translate to what you're doing now? Like, what was the path to having this big experience to where you are at this moment, helping tons of people and doing light language and healing and channeling and all sorts of amazing stuff?
Yeah. So in the early days, I would have people on a massage table, and then I would just do as my guides were telling me. I hadn't been exposed to energy healing. At that point, it was all from things that my guides had taught me or whatever. And that was real. That was like a constant communication of these are the kind of things that were happening, or the things that they were showing me. Then I transitioned to starting to work with people more like conversation. So at that first point, it was just energy flow. And then I started like talking to people, like, what's coming up for you? What do you want to work on? And I would notice that information would flow as we were doing that. And at that point, my guides were teaching me different aspects of healing. So it kind of went through a lot of different phases where it seemed to flow like this, or there was a lot of past life information, or there was a lot of emotional information, or there was a lot of information about belief systems, or chords that were attached, or things from this life. And so it just went through this very long process of teaching me a lot of different things. And I kind of became obsessed with, like, how can I do more for them in the time that we're together? What are these core issues that I'm seeing? And so I started developing lists of all the things that I was seeing. And I didn't know it at the time, because I was just, more, I had the focus on what can I do to help more, and how can I understand this better. But that was actually the core of Crystalline Soul Healing. And Crystalline Soul Healing is a silent modality. There's no sound or movement to it. It's an ancient Lyran technology. It's an alchemical template that is like a vast program or instruction set that, as you run the template, the higher self of the person is kind of going through those instruction sets, kind of like your computer would go through a scan, and it would say, oh no, this is fine. Don't need that. Don't need that. Oh, do need this. Don't need this now. I'm going to set it over there. So that's what the Crystalline Soul Healing template does, is the higher self is choosing what they're going to release and activate in the moment. So that part developed that way over many years. And then simultaneously, the light language was coming up. And so, I had a blissful time of silent light language. And then I had probably at least a solid year. I would say longer than that, probably 2 solid years of really holding it back and not trying to let the sound out until, the universe kind of pushed me in another direction lovingly. But those two things were going on simultaneously. And so, they're completely separate modalities, but they combine well together, just like light language does with many things, or Crystalline Soul Healing does with many other things. So it was probably 2, 3 solid years of building that foundation. And then I started meeting other people. I investigated some other modalities, and, exposed myself to other things, which is really healthy as well. And that just kind of rounded out this whole journey of working with energy healing. And so now I teach people light language, although that is something that they don't need me to activate. It can activate naturally in people, because we're all capable of doing it. But I do walk people through like an in-depth journey with that. I teach people Crystalline Soul Healing, and that's really a big focus of my path now, is helping other people become healers.
Yeah, that's something that is definitely always needed. Healing on so many levels. We see people with physical ailments that come from a lot of emotional or mental turmoils, and we also see a lot of patterns. And the template concept is a newer concept for me, as far as soul template layers. And this is something that got brought up about in detail last week when I was talking to Georgia Jean, who was also at the event that I was at in Arizona. And so I have an understanding, but um, I try to figure things out from both a logical and energetic perspective, but it usually takes me to logic first to get there. So you described it pretty well, these templates of the soul, and they're connecting. And when you walk through people, you're able to kind of pick up and read that and see and understand and connect with it. Um, can you describe maybe some templates that are very common with humans that a lot of us are working on now, and then can you kind of give us a example of how you might walk someone through that template to help them work on that, or to eradicate it, or whatever the work that you would do with that is?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I love about crystalline soul healing, and kind of a concept that my guides are always working with me on, is simplicity and complexity at the same time, because I like the simplicity, but there's always a lot of complexity that's going on beneath the surface. And in in this in this sense, the crystalline soul healing template is like a vast instruction set. So there's a lot of information that's within it, like beliefs that are shifting as appropriate, or emotions that are shifting as appropriate. And the template will run as a whole on the person. So if they're wanting to work on a specific issue, or maybe they just want to work on whatever's for their highest good, the whole template will run. And so it's a huge set of instructions. And that's what we do in the class, actually, is we just go through the whole template over the course of 3 days, kind of discussing what all of the different aspects of it are, because the higher self will take that complex amount of information, and yet that law of resonance kicks in, that the higher self just releases and activates naturally whatever the person is meant to heal at that time. So the whole template goes through things like certain emotions that need to clear, certain traumas that need to clear, certain beliefs that need to clear or activate, certain things physically that are shifting, so that the instruction sets are interacting in a different way. So the template itself runs holistically, like running a program on a computer, and then whatever's appropriate are the parts that get utilized. So that whole concept, to me, especially at the time, was not something I had heard of. And I there was somebody that I had a reading with a long time ago, and that was actually how I found out I was Lyran. It was something that she often did in the readings, but like 2 days or so before the call, which had been scheduled for a while, I heard, "Oh, I'm a Lyran," and then she confirmed it. And one of the things that she said that I did not understand at the time was the Lyrans are the template builders. And then many years later, I understood that this crystalline soul healing was a template. And I used to have friends that I was working on at the time, and we would spend hours going through every single little aspect of it, and like muscle testing every single one. And then finally one day I got the message, I don't have to do that individually anymore. I can do it all at once. And that's the function of a template, is it's like an instruction set. And then of course I was working on my friend the next day, where we normally muscle test every single thing. And she walks in, she's like, "I have a message for you. We can do it all at once now." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Yay, thank you."
that's
Validation.
amazing.
But but that whole theory of a template was something that was so new to me that I didn't even realize that's what I was doing at the time. But now, of course, it makes total sense. It's the simplicity of the complexity, that we don't have to figure it all out. There's a natural resonance in the body that figures it out.
That's beautiful. And see, this word template is like the word soul or higher self or dimension or density. These things have different connotation with each person who
Yes.
shares that, and that's always been a confusing aspect for a lot of people who are trying to learn that. So it makes sense, and it gives me a different perspective of the types of templates that you're talking about too, because when I'm thinking of templates as I've heard it used traditionally, my guides usually don't use that word unless they're talking about the creative force, or the layers of the soul that are actually creating the physical reality. And then I've heard it from other people talking about templates who are using it as a series of contracts and souls that things happen on or occur on. And then you hear a million different things, and that give
Mhm.
me a better insight too on what it is that you guys are doing with the work. So the simplicity comes through. And when you're teaching people how to look through these rules and how to look through their own interaction with their own template, what's kind of the biggest theme that you've been seeing in most people lately, maybe in the last year or two? That's kind of the big one.
So, what I've seen in the last year or two that's a big one is things that kind of feel like tectonic shifts in life, like changing direction. Things that were typical before no longer can be, stay the same or be tolerated or be resisted. So I see a lot of people shifting into a much deeper flow with their spiritual path, their ascension path, um, it- that more holistic aspect of it, that I'm living it in all parts of my life instead of just one. So that's been a big one. And the other thing that has stood out to me a lot over these past few years is I feel more grounded and committed light workers, meaning there's a stronger flow of people that are doing their inner work, because we all come here as humans that have things to work on and work through and work for. And it, usually people will kind of start off on that path, investigating a lot of things and experiencing a lot of things. And the universe has kind of a carrot and a stick um, process that's like, oh, aren't these wonderful experiences? And then the stuff comes up for healing. So sometimes when it would get to that time for the healing part, people would resist that. And of course, I even find that in myself sometimes still, where it's like, whoa, look what's been waiting in the background, not ready to shift yet. And I'm ready for it now. Okay, because it's here. But I that's so much more prevalent now, where it used to not be as prevalent, where it used to be more like, well, if we just do the things instead of do the work, then that's just good enough. And for years now, I've seen so many more light workers that are like, I want to feel that peace within. I want to feel that power within. I want to move through the things that I need to move through. And I just love that. It's the courageous work. Not easy.
No, it's not. And that's the thing too. In our community, there's a lot of things that are said, and then there are a lot of things that are either done or not done. And this is the weird thing for me about being a channeler. I hear my guides say things, and I'm like, that makes sense, yeah. And then I may try to apply it to my life and just don't get it, or either don't try to apply it to my life because hey, the way I'm doing it must be better, because I'm a human who knows my own brain, and then I go and deal with the same repetitive things. And I like the fact too that these templates are kind of all in one template, and it's all a kind of a set of instruction. Are you willing to play around with us on a theme? Because I imagine any theme that a soul can go through is with somewhere written in that template then, right?
Um, you mean in the Crystalline Soul Healing template?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty in depth of a lot of different topics. For example, you know, time is always part of our healing, like ancestral lines, or things that are connected even to our geography, or like where we live. Things like that are part of our healing. And so the that's always going to be or not always, that can be a theme that's connected in many things that we're experiencing. So definitely the vastness of it covers different areas.
Sure. And the reason I ask, because I'm trying to think of themes that I've seen common play, and kind of explored that idea too. Like when someone says, "Hey, I'm having problems shifting this thing in my life. I have a lot of excitement. I want to act on something. I intend to act on it. I plan to act on it. I search my life around it. But when it comes to that moment where I really need to do something in order for it to progress, I just can't do it." Something like that. That's a lot of people have had that issue continuously. It's an issue. So, if we're taking an example, if someone came to you and said that, how would you process that? Would you not even focus on the one thing that they're going through and kind of just read through the template, or intuitively get pulled to the parts of the template? Or is it something where you cross-examine what they're going through specifically and then look at that template in that way?
Yeah.
How does it work?
So what I like to do, and you could work with it a different way, but I like to read into any of the specifics that might be coming up around it, because I think it's good for us, since we live in the linear, to sometimes focus on the specifics. And then it's also good for us to not always focus on the specifics. But in that kind of process, I generally like to focus on some of the specifics of what they're working on. So, I'm having trouble moving this thing forward. Let's talk about it a little bit, because I want to feel into what's coming up. And then I like to go into a concentrated time of just working with the template and not talking, so that I can really focus in on what the template is doing, and what the template is bringing up. Oh, this is coming up for release. This is coming up for activation. This other part didn't come up at all. So I kind of like to combine both of those, my own intuitive flow of what's coming up as they're talking, and then I like to look at the intuitive flow of the template working directly, which I kind of separate those into linear time frames, but they're not necessarily so linear. Like, the template's not running until I say go.
Right. Well, that's my assumption too, is that a lot of it has to almost be intuitive, because the way you describe it, there's so much. Everything is kind of written into that template, as
Mhm.
far as your journey and soul. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around comprehensively, so that it makes sense. And then when you're reading these template energies, how is the adjustment made? Is it something that doesn't need to be adjusted because you're adjusting it as you're reading it? Like, how does it show up in the client's life when you're doing that? How do you transmute or help them find the information about what they need to change?
Yeah. So the the template is creating that healing through the higher self. So actually, the higher self is creating the healing with the template. Is a better way to say it. So the energy is shifting, and then how it's going to manifest for them, of course, as usual, like, is for some people it's going to be very rapid. Others it might unfold more slowly. Some people it might unfold over a longer period of time, but it just varies on what's appropriate in their path. And then some of that intuitive flow also might be some guidance on how to kind of work inwardly to help support that, and even action steps, if that's appropriate. But the as the higher self is initiating that healing, I'm just kind of watching that information and bringing forth whatever's coming up along the way.
That's perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense then. And it seems like this tool too is something that is able to be not just kind of looked at, but it's used for the transmutation itself, as it
Yes.
heals and then becomes much more powerful by it being read by yourself or someone who can read their own, and that energy comes through to that person with the more specific information for them, or the specific emotion for them, or the specific energy behind all of that kind of flows into their life. And yeah, I do understand that with people it's really different. A lot of us
Mhm.
experience a collective version of that in the last 4 years. It's like some people needed shifts to happen like that, and others needed it to trickle through. So yeah, thank you for kind of going through that with me. Like I said, it's for me, it's a mental exercise too, and now I feel like I understand the modality a lot better too, on both sides of the person who's doing the reading and the person receiving it, or the person who's doing it for themselves. And when you teach that too, you said that that's a big part of your focus and energy. Um, you said it takes about 3 days to teach someone, right? How to kind of read through the template.
Just to go through all the different aspects of the template, it's 3 days of going through each aspect and integrating that into their field, teaching each aspect, integrating that into their field. And then we spend time working with it, because it's kind of a mind scrambler for 3 days. Like, whoa, so much information. How am I going to remember it all? And 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 then once they start working with it, then it makes sense. And I love that you bring that up, because it's so important for us to honor the mental understanding and to get comfortable with that, because it's always how we start something new. We understand it, or we seek to understand it, and then once it makes sense, then things can flow more easily. And it's the same with something like a template, with the simplicity and the complexity of it. We spend time in that complexity so that there's some understanding of all the different parts. And then we move into the simplicity, which is part of life also, where the the profound power behind our intention, and the that simple flow creates a complex change. But we don't have to control the complexity. That would be futile. But when we understand that broader, we have that mental understanding of the broader flow, then the details unfold as appropriate. And so that's so much fun to kind of go through that mental exercise, that by the end of it you're like, oh my gosh, I'll never remember all of this. And then to find out, well, you never have to remember it all. It's in there, and it's all gonna, you've got access to it all, and then it'll flow naturally. So you don't have to, like, oh, is this a trauma or is it a belief? You don't have to figure that out. You'll be shown.
Well, that's what I was just about to say too. When coming around and kind of figuring out the aspect of that mental exploration, it just proved exactly what you first said,
Yeah.
complexity, and then having it simple. And the energy behind that is like it is with everything. The consciousness behind the drive behind the consciousness, the thoughts, the emotions, the belief system, all these things that play a part in working towards creating something in life, and something for yourself, or something in general. You can know every step to manifest. Manifestation 101. I'll teach a class and I'll tell you every step, and you can learn those. But when it comes down the practical nature of the experience, and the passion, and knowing your own power, really is, it can't be supplemented. And by teaching this to these people, it gives them the opportunity to know these are the places with my soul and higher self that I can work with and fix them. And I don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that. And I
Yes.
absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I
We've
love it.
all got it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. I appreciate sharing that. And as you're going with your work with people and kind of doing all the things that you've done now, are there any things that you've done that have surprised you, even though you've learned this system, you understand the system, you've worked with tons of people doing the system? Do you still get surprised? Are there still things that are like, holy moly, I had no clue that that was even a thing?
You know, the thing that surprises me the most is the the kind of courage that I see in people to really get into details and heal things. That's always what surprises me the most, because I think I think we will tend to think of ourselves too often as um, not not the powerful beings that we are. It's just kind of seems like day-to-day life, like, well, that's kind of wild, but to really see that courage to be like, I want to change this, or I want to create this, and um and I just love that. It's like getting to meet people's souls and seeing them through that lens of love. And then, some of the things that will come from that are sometimes, amazing physical healings, or, job changes, all kinds of different things. But to me, it's always that deeper thing of, that's a courageous angel right here on earth, and then everything in their life is kind of flowing out, rippling out, and affecting everyone else from there in their life. So it's really those broader things that I love. And that was pivotal for me early on in my healing career, to see that, like, wow, this person doesn't even know the power that's within them, and then over time they discover it.
That's always a rewarding thing to see that what you've helped others with, they now have gotten down or accomplished. And I know that's the age old concept for teachers in general. That's why people who teach kindergarten or college professors love that, when they're able to see what they've shared and what they've helped balance, even though it's kind of in a different way, kind of similar. But they see that experience by that person just come to life inside of them. And I think that's always wonderful when you're working with other people, trying to help them, to see them expand. But I would imagine too, inside of your work and the way that you're working with people, that there are a lot of things that shifted in people, that they needed, that they had no clue that they needed either. And is that an experience that you've seen in your feedback when you talk to people who've been through this type of work?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Sometimes, they'll come with a certain issue that they want to work on, and then something else presents itself, or something else gets shifts or changes, and they're like, wow, I wasn't even expecting that. And especially around the inner mind, the peacefulness, or negative chatter going away. It's like a different inner relationship with the self, that that that's very common, because the release factor just kind of helps bring them back to themselves. And then, there's not all that static in there. So, yeah, but that definitely does happen a lot, because we go for one thing and it's so intertwined with other things, or this other thing is more foundational to what they originally came for. And so it's just a matter of that unfolding. But I love that, because I always take it also as like a learning opportunity of, like, whoa, I didn't even know those things could be connected. And so I'm learning from every single session, every student.
I
Love it.
can't imagine. That's kind of why it's blowing my mind how when you do this work with other people, how that kind of is an expression where all these things are tied together. And
Mhm.
the energy of that is always logically made sense to me, but energetically, I always had those questions like, hey, I wonder why these things happen in this order to this many people, or whatever the case is. And I see it a lot just in the patterns of speaking to people. When I'm doing my own channeling, I'm in deep trance. I'm in no man's land, and way far away from the conversation. But when I come back, a lot of people recap what was talked about and what was shared. And then I see their own energy kind of shifting from their main purpose of what they wanted to talk about to a whole different thing. And I'm like, well, how does that happen? And it's surprising to see all the interconnectedness between the layers of our emotional selves and our mental selves, and this. Um, when you talked about, the linear bonds that people have, with their genetics, or with their heritage, or with their DNA. What kind of things have you found that are kind of connected to those things that most people normally wouldn't? Because I think in our community, most people would say, well, genetic, that usually deals with, past traumas, or um, ancestral trauma, but most people would end it right there. What are the other types of things that you found by working with so many people doing this, that are kind of connected, that you wouldn't normally think would be connected to those things?
So, often I'll find that it goes back deeper into their Akashic genetics. So obviously they're dealing with things in this lifetime, they're dealing with family things, they're dealing with the ancestral lines in this lifetime that's in their physical body. But then there's those interdimensional layers that are holding more of their Akashic information. And so there are things like certain geographies that will affect them, earth geographies. Maybe they go visit a place and they'll have reactions to that, positive or negative, it doesn't matter, but it's all healing, it's all transformation. So they'll be connected into certain geographies, they'll be connected into time frames, like they hit an age and then certain things come up. So it's getting deeper into the Akashic genetics that are affecting them that aren't necessarily connected to their physical DNA. And that's always fascinating. And then, of course, it goes beyond Earth. So there's cosmic genetics that they can be working through, and having things come up in this lifetime that are connected to another planet, another experience. So that's always fascinating as well, because you never know what's going to come up. Is the information going to pertain to this lifetime? Is it going to pertain to another time and space? So that's a fun one.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and the idea, and when you're talking about the Akashic heritage, you're just meaning any plethora of experiences that they've had in other lives in general, not necessarily just Earth lives, or within that heritage, or within that structure, just kind of anywhere and everywhere, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, because it's connected into their soul stream, and that was part of why they wanted it called Crystalline Soul Healing, because it was developed to tie not just into this lifetime, but to directly connect them with other aspects of the self, aspects of the soul that are pertinent to this lifetime.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and that resonates highly, with myself too, and it makes a lot of sense. I know we're getting closer to the time where we're going to be doing our oh my word, my brain is not on functioning. I can't even remember the word to it. Our basically our question and answer time, where we do the questions, but um, before we get to that, I want to ask you about kind of where the Earth has been for the last few years. We've seen a lot of it's calmed down, a lot of it is better now than it was, but there was a time around the pandemic where it really broke a lot of people open, and a lot of anger and a lot of frustration and fighting with people was occurring. And for me, what I saw was two groups of people diving deeply into their deeper fears. Half of them were in fear about their mortality and safety, and other half were kind of in fear of their freedom and suppression, or however that looked for them. And I'm trying to kind of figure out, not, I don't like talking necessarily about this time because it is still very sensitive, but I just get from a soul level, from an earth collective perspective, why did that happen? Why did it come when it came? And what was the big lesson for most people from that, from your perspective, or from what your guides have shared about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, for quite a while before that, 15, 16, something like that, Ariane had started talking about how we were going to see continued polarization between people, even light workers, that there would kind of be a moving in two different directions, or kind of a pulling apart. And they would they would often show me like cell division, like that's how uh, things actually can grow. And when they have that polarization, it can actually give you a different perspective that you may not have had if you didn't have that polarization. Then, as things unfolded, especially during the pandemic and things, we really got brought to a level of dealing with our fears. And they had to kind of come up in a way that would push, for lack of a better term, but push some people to deal with things, and push others to find their boundaries with things. And so it kind of became this catalyst of really tuning into your own energy and information, and then moving from there. And when things got too much to handle, reacting in the way that was most appropriate for you in the moment. Now, for some, that reaction was externalized and focused on governments or corporations, all the good stuff. No.
Right.
um, but for others, it became about how can I neutralize my energy, and neither of them are wrong. Like
Right.
people, they needed to move through what they needed to move through. The thing that was so challenging with it was within that collective energy, to hold that peace, to hold your mental focus and hold your neutrality. That took a lot more work. So it was exercise and strengthening, and it's not that unusual of a process for a species to go through, that kind of pushes a catalyst of a turning point. And these things are always much longer. These changes and shifts on a collective level are always much longer than we would like, but that's still catalyzing a lot of, there's still a lot of change that's being catalyzed in a lot of seemingly negative ways, which of course are very traumatic. That was not an easy time. This is not an easy time. And
Right.
yet
Right.
it's going to just keep unfolding that personal empowerment. And the way that Ariane has kept showing this to me and talking about it in different ways is kind of like that. Oh gosh, now I can't think of the word. It is the it kind of neutralizes your magnetic flow so that things can't get through. The cage, what is it called? Can't think of the word, but it's that neutralizing cage so that energies aren't just flowing through as strongly, and that's that peaceful inner flow that strengthens and empowers you. And that's what this all of these things are catalyzing us for. The other thing that they are catalyzing us for is really focusing our energy more directly. That when these negative things happen, that we are more directly putting our intentions into the world. And not that every moment of your life should be focused on that, because you're here to live your life, but that there's more of a conscious focus on that, rather than just observing what's happening and going, oh no, that's happening. That you will have some of that. We're meant to be interacting. We are giving and receiving machines, but that we don't over interact in ways that disempower us, and that we don't over avoid in ways that disempower us, but that we are definitely flowing our intentions of resolution that we want from these things, not the control of them, or who's good or who's bad or who's right or who's wrong, but the resolution that we want to experience from these challenges.
I really like that perspective, and sorry I gave you the word finding thing. I handed my word miss over to you, but a Faraday cage, is that what you were talking about?
Faraday cage. I was like,
Yeah,
it's a name. It's a name.
yeah. No, I did that too with my own thing, and I'm like, for some reason lightning bolt went through my brain, and then it just broke my brain when I thought that. So, yeah. It's a beautiful that's a beautiful way to see it too, and something that I know for me personally. For me, both the fear of mortality of my son and the fear of losing freedom both hit me equally hard at
Yes.
first, and it was intense.
Yes.
Because my son almost died when he had, we all had, him, his mom, and myself had the swine flu when it first hit the U.S. in like 2007 or 8.
Wow.
And it was bad. I mean, we had the first round of it, and we couldn't breathe. It almost killed him anyway. So I was, equally freaking out about both things.
Yep.
And after I calmed down, I saw, for me, was trying to find, because I've always tried to be as neutral as I can about anything, because I want to understand other people's perspectives. If someone's like, hey, I want to vote for this guy, and I'm completely against that idea, I'm like, well, why?
Mhm.
Not like, oh, you piece of garbage, it's just not
Right.
in me to do that. So I wanted to understand people, but I also wanted them to not attack each other. I saw families and friendships be destroyed through that thing, and I always thought, why would you guys let these opinions drive you so far apart? There was always a beauty to old standards and old belief systems that we now know are highly faulted, but there's beauty in seeing the old saying, you don't tell people who you vote for, you don't tell people how much you make. And that was a big thing as a kid that my parents always said, and now I know why they said that. But I think people were called to speak how they felt, for a lot of different reasons. The internet being a thing is part of it, but also we needed to get all of that out into the open, and we
Mhm.
needed to see all the systems that were broken
Yep.
and see how we can fix them. And I love that. Uh, because I had never really considered that idea too, that when you were sharing, talking about how in ourselves we had to get these things out, and we had to learn how to not overreact to things. Because, oh my Lord, that was a big part of it. So yeah, thank you for
Totally.
sharing that too. I really appreciate that insight and perspective. Um, it's close enough to lightning round. I think we'll just jump into that, because if we start another topic, we'll end up pushing way over.
I know.
But the lightning round, not the lightning bolt, was something I just came up with that's kind of designated. We've got to know you as the person who created this amazing modality, and as the person who does light language, as a channeler and all sorts of amazing stuff that we've been able to talk about. But I want to get to know you as the very human that you are. And I design these stupid questions that are highly benevolent to get to know you better. So we'll start off, and if you don't like any of them, you can pass them. That's no problem.
Okay.
The first one, what's your favorite color?
That is so much harder than it should be. But I would say my favorite color is browns. Any kind of brown, cream, gold, copper. I just love browns.
We've had a gold before, but we've never had a brown. So I love
Yeah.
that. That's very neat. Perfect. And thank you. What is your favorite food?
Oh gosh, these are the hardest questions ever. I'll say mango today because I had some amazing mango, but I love food.
Yeah, I do too. And it's funny, I've got that type of personality that can easily do favorite, but my wife, she does not. She, if you say what's your favorite, she means like right now or like ever. You
Yes,
know, so
yes. Because I
um,
feel like I'm leaving things out that I love.
yeah, that's exactly. My wife would have said the same thing. You know, she used to pet the cats equally in her house when she had 6 or 7 as a kid because she didn't want any of them to feel left out. So I always thought that
That's
was
sweet.
adorable.
That is
Very
so sweet.
sweet. It is. Um, uh, what is your favorite band and or song?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I don't listen to that kind of music anymore. First, I will say, I am embarrassingly hooked on smooth jazz. It
Oh,
is embarrassing.
smooth jazz is great
No,
though.
it's not embarrassing. I love it. Um, but my favorite band, one that was really pivotal for me that I really loved was Incubus.
Mm,
Um,
very interesting. They're good.
yeah, yeah. I just really loved their work and it just pops into my head to answer this question because that kind of came up for me around the time that I was in this healing journey and things were opening up and I found that often their music would kind of speak to me in different ways and help me along things and sometimes prod me on things. Like they actually had a song because they live in California somewhere, and, this is obviously on Venice Beach probably, but they had a song. You know how people would put things before their songs where it's like a little skit or something?
Oh
They
yeah.
were they were recording someone, and this was when light language was opening up for me, and I was so resistant and just this was so hard for me. But they were recording this guy that sounds like he was on Venice Beach, and he's making sounds that are like speaking in tongues and like light language, but it was a pretty unusual energy. And they were making fun of him. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, isn't this interesting? Here's this band that I love, and this thing is happening to me that I'm so freaked out about, but also so passionately drawn to. And here's the song making fun of it." But it didn't deter me. I just thought that was interesting, but I love their music.
That is great. That's actually a very good sync. Having that, I I have a very fun time when I get made fun of or when something I like gets made fun of.
Yes.
It always makes me smile because I'm like, well, people pay attention to it. You know, that's wonderful.
Exactly. And it's
It's
weird.
it is
I love it.
it is very weird. Our whole community is very weird, but I embrace that totally now.
Yep.
When I first came to the scene, not so much, but yeah,
Yes.
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And what's your favorite type of animal?
Cats. I love cats.
Cats? Any specific type of cat or breed of cat or specific cat that you've had that really went above and beyond?
Well, I had a soul kitty that came to me when I was younger, and she was with me throughout my whole opening. And she felt like a soulmate through and through. Well, she was a soulmate. And she passed many years ago. And then my partner got a cat right before we moved in together, and I knew the cat was coming. And so he is our beautiful, I think he's called a rag doll, and he's just gorgeous, long-haired rescue cat, but he was a show cat, obviously, or going to be a show cat because he broke his leg, but he's neutered with a little show cat thing. Todd got him from the rescue. And then about a year later, and that cat looks like Todd's old soul kitty. And then about a year later, he's like, you should come see this cat at the place. And it's she is like my old soul kitty. So we each have a cat that looks like our soul kitties, and we love both of them. But she's like a tabby Mancoon mix,
Oh,
and a little lap cat. He's haughty and adorable,
oh,
powerful
wow.
healer.
They are. Cats are great healing. I never noticed how great they were for that aspect. And uh, my wife Kalina brought her cat from California when she moved to Chicago before she moved to Michigan with me, and her name was Chini, and she was amazing. And she just passed a couple years back, but I didn't realize how much cats healed until that cat came into our life, because the only exposure I had had to cats was well before that, and then a few with my son's mom when we were living together. But not really during the time of my spiritual understanding. And then I see her, who's not a lap cat. She loved to get pet, but she wouldn't come up on your lap. Literally days after Kalina and I, um, well, let's days after Kalina got pregnant, she started sleeping on Kalina's lower stomach area
Mm.
and just purring, and it
Mm.
was so crazy to see it. So cats are very cool. I love cats a lot, and it's a very beautiful story. So thank you too for sharing that. And uh, we've only got a couple more, I promise. What is the most beautiful place that you've been, for the beauty of the nature that you've seen, but also the feeling, the energy of it?
Mm. Wow. You know, when I was in Norway and I went to, after I was teaching, I went out to a fjord with my parents actually, and they met me there, and then we drove to this fjord. That was absolutely amazing. I saw things that I just was like, wow, I can't believe I'm seeing all of this. It's like I went through so many different types of nature, from things that were desolate looking, like no trees can grow, um, rocky and water and crystal blue water, and white knuckling driving on those things.
Oh, I bet.
And then such lush green trees. And then when we were at the bottom of the fjord, I took this little walk, and there was all this water flowing. I mean, it was just like magnificent waterfall that had so much power to it. And then the trees there were so alive. I could hear them talking. I could hear like sprites, elementals, and things. And then I took a picture where I heard the trees and the elementals talking to me. And I got back to the place, and my mom, I was showing this to her because I was like, Mom, look, there's a face in the tree. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can see it so clearly. And she goes, look, there's another one right here. And they were just such clear photos of faces in the trees. Like it was just beyond, my eyes are kind of making that happen. So cool. Just such lively energy.
Oh, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. It's that whole area, the old Scandinavia, but mostly Iceland is a place that I've been called to my whole life, and I know a lot of people love and enjoy that area, but there's also some energy of people not wanting to be in the cold when it gets cold up there. But for some reason, Iceland has always called out to me, and I'm gonna go visit in the next couple of years for sure. I got to. It's something I must
Excellent.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And do you remember the name or area of that specific place? You said it was a fjord, but do you remember like what town, area, or was around?
I do not. It is one of their most famous fjords, and I do not remember the name of it. My dad kept telling me because he's the map guy, and I still couldn't remember it even when I was there.
Yeah, I was gonna say some of the names of the towns there. Yeah, I don't. It's yeah. Some of the
Yeah.
names of the towns are like Fjordur, Berdur, Gudder.
Yes, I
Yeah,
can pronounce Oslo.
exactly. Yeah, me too. I think that's about the only town I know in
Yeah.
that area. Well, thank you for sharing that. Last question for our lightning round. What was your favorite childhood memory?
Hmm. So I really liked being out in nature. Um, so it's not really a specific one, but that to me was when I felt most comfortable. And we had like woods behind our house that I would just go out and play in, and we would build forts, and it just being there, was just lovely. That was my favorite.
What part of the country was that?
I grew up in South Carolina.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of horses where I lived. I didn't have horses, but the area had horses. I had friends that had horses, and that the woods that were behind us were like national, or not national park, but like state park woods. And so there was just so much to play and do, and just you could go back there all day and see so many different things.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's beautiful. That tends to be something too that I've seen as a answer that's kind of been repeated through many of the guests that we've had in that question is being out in nature and kind of the freedom that came along with that. And I know now it's well, we're at different stages of our life as adults, but also kids are built differently now than they were because of all the technology
Hmm.
and stuff. But being able to have that access to nature without prying eyes on you, so that you can just explore. That's also something that doesn't happen a lot for kids. They go
Yeah.
out there, they've got chaperones and everything too. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah, beautiful time. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to get an opportunity for you to kind of share with everybody. Hey, if I want to find you, where can I find you? What do you have coming up? All those things. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you for coming tonight and for chatting and for doing the show. But also thank you for doing the work that you did. I really enjoyed the time that we were able to have together at the
Yes.
C5 with Ruben and
Yep.
getting to know you since. And I really enjoy everything that I've heard from you since we've met. A lot of the energy that you put behind it, you can tell you're excited about and sharing. And I think, like we talked about earlier, it's just such a missing element in so many different parts of our community where people aren't so excited about what they're doing. And that excitement is what teaches people, and it's what really touches their heart, and it's well needed commodity. So thank you
Mhm.
for doing what you do. I want to give you the floor and let you know, and also to tell the listeners, anywhere where you listen to this, whether you're listening live or whether you're listening on a playback on the other networks that were redistributed through, you can find a lot or all of the links that we're going to talk about tonight in the bottom and in the description of the show. But I'm going to give you the floor and just kind of let people know how to get a hold of you and where you're at and all of those good things.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It was so great to get to see you channel in person and meet you at your event with Ruben. And I just am so glad to be here and get to know you better like this.
Me too.
Um,
Thank you for that.
yeah, yeah. So people can find me on my website. It's my name, jamieprice.com. And Jamie looks like Jamye, Jamye Price.com. And I have not put out my 2024 schedule yet, but I'll be teaching Crystalline Soul Healing. I'll be teaching light language and doing some other events and stuff. And actually, Rob, hopefully I'll get to see you in June in Shasta with Ruben. So
Yes,
we'll see how
yes.
that goes.
Yeah.
Yep. But 2024 schedule will be out soon. But there's lots of stuff there. There's tons of channelings and blogs to read. I write a lot of poetry sometimes. There's videos to watch. I have a book opening to light language and a deck of cards that's a light language healing deck, the Cosmic Consciousness Ascension Deck. But you'll find everything there on my website. My newsletter is there for you to stay in touch, and just years and years of information on the website.
And I'm sorry too, was that jamieprice.com or jamie.com?
JamiePrice.com.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought so, but yeah, I put up the wrong one. Sorry about that. Yeah, so everybody who's looking now, sorry, price.com. All right, here we are. Yeah, no worries, Kalina. I saw she put that up there, and then yeah, no worries, Kalina. Don't worry about it. So you can go there too, and I hope I spelled it right. I'm so
Yes,
okay.
actually,
Perfect.
you
Yeah.
did. Yay.
And I wanted to ask you that too, and that's something that I didn't. That name is a unique spelling of that. Is there a specific reason or energy behind the different way to spell that?
No, that's what my parents did. It was the 70s. So
Yeah, yeah. I take it your parents might have been into the hippiness at some point.
just slightly, not much.
Yeah, my parents too. So my dad was a weird guy. He was military for 20 years and a hippie before and after. So that was a fun one. All right. Well, thank you for coming to the show, and thank you for being here and chatting with us tonight. I look forward to anything we do in the future where we're in proximity or doing something together, and just to, continue connecting and all of that too. It's really been fun to get to know you tonight. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And all of you guys, next week here at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, we will have the one and only Shelly Young, dear friend of ours. She was featured. If you're not familiar with her, you can go to YouTube and type in the channel panel 2015, which was the Awakening from Within channel panel, and that was in Los Angeles. And we have her featured on there. It's free to watch for everyone, so you can go there and watch her channel. And it was really amazing. Or go to her channel, but she'll be here next week. And after that, we will have several guests. We will have Paul Selig on the show in the next few weeks, I believe, late December. So check that out when you guys get an opportunity to, and we'll announce all the guests as they go forward in time. And thank you guys for being a part of the show. As always, you guys are highly active in the chat. I love you guys for that. I appreciate it. Even if I don't see all the comments, I watch them back whenever I'm listening back. So thank you guys for participating in the chat. And thank you guys for supporting all the work we do here at the ET Whisper and the Enlightenment Evolution Network. We really appreciate all of your guys' love, comments, and subscribing, commenting also helps get the videos out to people who might not normally see it, because YouTube is on our side again. They actually love us again. So the algorithm change has helped, and you guys helped that tremendously. So thank you guys for doing that. And we'll see you guys next week at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific, and we'll be dropping videos and Friday we'll have a galactic channeling to you guys. So love you guys. We'll see you next Wednesday on the other side. And thanks again for everything. And thanks again, Jamie, for being here tonight too. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. It was a pleasure. And thank you guys too for being here. We'll see you guys next week. Love you guys, and bye.